Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wild Health Podcast. We're a genetics-based precision medicine company that's exploring all the big questions around holistic health, wellness, and performance optimization. If you're tired of the traditional healthcare system and want to sign up as a member with us, head over to wildhealth.com. And if you're someone who's looking for a high-touch, all-inclusive concierge medical experience specifically designed for executives and high performers, check out our premium program at wildhealth.com/premium. Now let's get into it. Hey everybody, really excited for this conversation with Mark England. In 2002, Mark moved to Thailand to further his dream of becoming a professional fighter. He was training in Muay Thai or Thai boxing with the sport's very best. 3 years and 2 knee surgeries later, that dream was over. And after he spiraled into self-doubt, pity, and being an overall miserable person, going as far as forgetting how to smile for an entire year, Mark decided it was time for a major change. So it started with devouring personal development books, then experimenting with raw food diets, detoxes, and paleo lifestyles, Tony Robbins seminars, Byron Katie workshops, yoga retreats, tribal ceremonies, you name it. Things as different as possible from his suburban Virginia upbringing. Now, Mark knew that whatever it was that led to his debilitating bout of depression must also affect other people, and he was determined to find out techniques to make us into better, more effective humans. And ultimately, he discovered that every conversation and coaching session about fear, trauma, self-loathing, and self-doubt shared one common trait: the way in which people speak about them, the words we use. Mark is the founder of Enlifted, as well as Procabulary. He has coached and spoken at a number of events. He's coached thousands of clients. We're going to go ahead and dive into the conversation, and we'll give you some links in the show notes on how to get more Mark in your life, and hope you really enjoy. Hey, Mark. So great to have you here with us. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Mike. Much appreciated.
Yeah, so I got your bio and preamble out of the way, pre-recorded, so you don't have to sit here uncomfortably while I talk about all of your achievements in history, which is one of my least favorite things about going on and being interviewed, is having somebody read my bio while I listen to it. So you dodged a bullet.
Thank you. This is my 348th podcast that I've been on, and I've listened to a lot of people tell me what I've done.
Yeah, not the most informative for you, but we're here for the listeners.
We are. That's a very good way to say it. We are here for the listeners. We're here to talk about some stuff and provide a valuable conversation for people.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that some of the before we press the record button, you took me on a little mini tour of the location you're in your garage and the land outside, and I can hear just like this beautiful background of birds chirping. And please don't close the garage door. It's super quiet, but it's like I feel like I'm in a guided meditation app or something right now. So this is really hitting the spot for me.
You have the voice of someone who facilitates guided meditation. So between the birds outside and your voice, Mike, we got to do that. We got to be entertaining. We might put them into a theta state.
Yeah, let's not start any conscious connected breath work, or everybody's going to pass out. All right, let's jump into it. So you are entrenched and really deeply committed in exploring the power of words. And I think, how would you explain the power of words to someone who's never really considered that words have that much power?
They shape the way we see things. And arguably the most important thing that they shape the way that we see is ourself. And so I was a elementary school sports teacher before I got into this interesting and somewhat strange and fascinating, exciting line of work. In my opinion, those are all my opinions of it. So I come from an education background. I've got a degree in education, and I was brought up in the public school system. And on neither side of that fence did I have any courses, classes, or even conversations about how my language influenced my imagination, my energy, my feelings and emotions, my posture, my body language, and definitely not my breathing. And so most people's education about their language comes down to spelling, grammar, and definitions. There's way more to it than that. We're telling ourselves a story. We're telling ourselves a story to ourselves about ourselves, and so I'm one of the co-founders of Enlifted. I'm the head coach of Enlifted. I deliver all of our trainings, and lucky us, we have a simple definition of mindset, and it's the story that we tell ourselves. And if we want to go there now, let's do it. Our man Alan Watts is my favorite Alan Watts quote. He said, "When we learn to think about our thinking, we become alive in a new way." And most people are not thinking about their thinking. They're just thinking, and there is a difference.
Oh yeah, I worked with a with a client not long ago who noted that they had a very busy mind, and I said, "So what part of you is noting that you have a busy mind?" And just getting that little bit of separation between being identified completely with our thoughts and being aware of our thinking can be transformative for people, but it is something largely unconsidered, and certainly in the West, and also definitely not taught in school, right? I mean, I can't remember ever receiving any instruction on how to choose the right words to think in order to adjust my mindset or achieve a goal professionally or personally. I think there's this
How about to unravel the victim mentality? That's quite the skill.
Right. Healing, right? How do you reframe for healing? And, I think if there's a risk of misunderstanding with the work that you're doing, I think it's, have you watched Ted Lasso? So, comedy series about a U.S. Football coach who goes to England to coach soccer in England, and hysterical. Highly recommend. Why is hugely popular. But there's a character in there who has who's doing like self-affirmation, not all the time, but his self-affirmation statement is, "I am a strong and capable man. I am a strong and capable man." And I know that's not the bulk of what we're at here. We're not just looking for something positive to look at yourself in the mirror in the morning and say to yourself so that you can change. This is a much more fundamental shift. So maybe just to give folks like a real life or even personal, if you're comfortable, example of how changing your language around one particular thing could change your mindset and result in a significant improvement in your life.
For sure. Well, I tell the story of the first time I saw someone change one word and then walk themselves out of a very uncomfortable story. That happened in 2003. So the bio is true, everybody. I moved over to Thailand in 2002 for Thai boxing. I was competitive in the States before I went over there. I won a couple of state kickboxing titles and other stuff. Who cares? And I went over there and I ended up living over there for a decade, which still sounds strange to say. The plan was to go over there for a year and teach and practice Thai boxing and come back and go pro. That's not what happened. The shortest, quickest version of it is I had my second knee surgery over there. The whole fight game stopped. Darkness descended. I didn't laugh for an entire year. I don't recommend that. And then finally, once I got sick and just darkness, it descended. I entrenched a big-time victim mentality about the whole thing, because that's actually what was a majority of what was fueling the stories that were fueling my desire to fight and compete and get better, is that I had this fear of not being good enough. I had this fear that there was something wrong with me and I was somehow doomed to fail. And because of a couple of childhood fights on the playground that broke out and I ran the other way, which haunted me forever, I'm going to go out there and prove that I'm not scared. by fighting, and that my whole way of positioning myself in the world, and it just evaporated, and I turned miserable. And so after a year of that, I finally got sick of myself, and I was teaching elementary school PE at an international school, great gig. The vice principal came back from a cleanse, a detox, this place called the Spa down on an island in the Gulf of Thailand called Koh Samui. He came back and he's like, man, they're doing these really cool 7-day cleanses down there. You know, you go down there and you pay to not eat. And I'm like, what? You pay them to not eat? He's like, yeah, you get some herbal pills and a coconut and a yoga class, and you 7 days you're going to feel fantastic. I was like, I'll go do that. And so I went down there and I did that. I paid him to not eat. I got a couple of vitamins and some water and felt great. Better. We'll just say better. And then my third time down there, I went to an emotional detoxification workshop, and the guy talked about words, stories, and breathing. And then he said, is anyone struggling with a story? And this woman shot her hand up and told the story of her and her friends going to spring break beach week. They got a house. Her boyfriend and all his friends got the house next door. This is in college. Add alcohol, press play. And he hooked up with one of her best friends in front of everybody one night, and then dumped her in front of everybody the next night. So, yeah. Stinger of a breakup. And so he had her play the story through. First time, didn't touch any of the words, and she's angry and crying. Second time, he started adjusting some of the words, and the story loosened up. And that third time, he stopped her at the sentence that held the whole thing together. And he had her repeat it a few times so everybody's looking at the same statement. He did that to me. Say that again. He did that to me. Say it again. He did that to me. Take out me at the end and put in himself. And she goes, it was such a profound departure from the story that she'd been relentlessly telling herself for 4 years. And it went like this. Here was the delivery. He did that to himself. It was a clunky delivery, and it went up at the end. It's called uptalk, which means that the statement's a question. And then you see it catch, and you see the air come off the top. He did do that to himself. And then she started talking about how it was actually worse for him. There was a lot of drama. He lost friends. And then she finished by saying, that was never going to work out anyway. He was actually really weird. And, right? And I saw that, and I was like, that right there. Because I had a he did that to me story, too. He shouldn't have been kicking that hard. We were just warming up. Mm-hmm. And that was in 2003. That was the first time I saw anyone slow the story down. That's a very important principle when it comes to storytelling. As a very solid rule of thumb, everybody, the faster the story goes, the harder it is to change, for a couple of mechanical reasons. One of the main reasons is that the faster people talk, the more trapped their breath is in their chest. And breath in the chest equals attachment to the combination of the words. Good luck changing your client's mind or your mind while your breath is trapped in your chest. It won't work. It's called amygdala hijack. And so it was the first time I'd ever seen somebody slow down the story so they could change out some parts. It's the same thing as very rarely does a mechanic take a car to the highway and drive at 70 miles an hour and pop the hood and start changing things out. It's the same thing with our stories. And it fascinated me. And I was a horrible student at school. It wasn't that I was disruptive, I was destructive. I was so bored, and kids aren't meant to sit that long. Let's just go ahead and call a spade, right? And so this was, the fight game was the first thing, and this thing was the second thing that just holds my attention. And January 17th, 2007, I went back to that same spa and put my poster up with all the other coaches, and that was the day that I went pro, and I've been full-time on the clock since. And I can tell story after story after story of what happens when people make some seemingly minor adjustments to the words that they're using to tell themselves a story. And it's very common for most people to fall into the trap of thinking that the solution to their problems, which are so big and complicated, that solution has to be equally as big and complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And I can hand them a pen and a piece of paper and show them otherwise most of the time. Here's an example. A woman came in and sat down and said, she told me about her divorce that happened a while ago, and she said, he made me think we needed to get married. And I said, say that again? And she goes, what? Because most people aren't paying attention to their words. I said, that sentence, he made me think we needed to get married. And she said it again. And then I gave her a piece of paper and a pen, and I had her write it down. We're really big on writing stuff down. Because look at the words, everybody. The fastest way to slow a story down is to get the words on paper. Fastest way for you to be able to think about your thinking is to get the words on paper so you can see them. And I had her scratch out the he made me, and put in I. And she didn't like it. Part of her didn't like it because there was part of her that wanted to be absolved from any responsibility of the, it takes two to tango thing, of the marriage and the dissolution, dissolving of the marriage, whatever that word is. And finally, it was impeding her ability to take responsibility for other things and then move forward and become a better version of herself. And finally, the part of her that was resisting it surrendered, and she said it. She didn't like it at first. You can tell in the delivery. I made me think we needed to get married. She thought about it. She goes, another breath came out. I did. Now, granted, my parents, they were putting a lot of pressure on me, and they wanted a grandkid and all these things. And she goes, but you know what? If I'm being honest, I was the one that talked me into saying yes. Of course it was her that talked her into saying yes. I mean, it'd be really unfortunate if someone else was able to talk her into saying yes.
Yeah.
And from there, other stories came out, and we got the ball rolling. Here's an example of how one sentence can shape someone's and it's happening all the time. Our language is at all times, everyone, interacting with our reticular activating system. So what's the reticular activating system, or RAS for short? In layman's terms, which I am one, it's the lens that we see things through. It's a lens, it's a filter, it has a search and an edit function. And it's the thing that's responsible for when you buy a new car and you start seeing that new car out there all over the place. Once something gets deemed as important or true, this is also confirmation bias. Or selective attention. It goes on a search mission to go find more of that thing. Let's say it's a Toyota Corolla. You buy a Toyota Corolla and you look at that thing every day, and in a short amount of time, the RAS is like, okay, cool, this is important to us. Go find more Toyota Corollas. And as you are finding, you're like, where are these Toyota Corollas? And as you're identifying more of those things, you're editing out red Jeeps and white trucks because it's not the thing that you're looking for. And I won't go into detail about the story. The most popular study that I know about selective attention and the reticular activating system is the invisible gorilla study. I highly suggest people looking that up because it's unbelievable until you do it. You can see the original video on YouTube. So this woman came in and she was extremely self-aware. Self-awareness is fantastic. And a lot of times you need more than self-awareness. As in, you need a tool to go into the stories that are in there negatively influencing how you see yourself. And she had imposter syndrome in her marriage. And she sat down and she said, I'm struggling in my marriage. My husband thinks I'm attractive. I refuse to believe him. I know where it's coming from. I just don't know what to do about it. And she told me the story of when she was 10 and her family went to her grandparents' house. They get out of the car. They walk in the house. As soon as they get in the house, her great aunt leans down and goes, "My, you have a big nose, just like me." Thanks. Little girl tightens up, stiffens up, runs in the bathroom, hey, everybody listen to this podcast. What do you think was the first thing she saw when she looked in the mirror? Her nose, which was no bigger now than it was 10 seconds ago, but in her imagination, she's got a honker, which means she's ugly, and now the reticular activating system goes, oh, okay, well, if you're ugly, great. I'm going to go relentlessly find and show you all the flaws and all of your positive traits. I'm going to edit those out. So when hubby goes, damn, baby, you look good, and the majority of her goes, you don't really mean that. Like, that's how this thing works. So it's called spelling, folks. The definition of a spell, not mine, Webster's, is a word or a combination of words of great influence. That's it. And it works both ways. Nothing ever works out for me. That's a combination of words that greatly influences how I see things, myself, other people, edits out opportunity. Or, man, I'm making a lot of progress. Or I've got a lot of support. When I say that and I believe that, and it influences my ability to see the areas where I'm making progress and have support. And then, nothing, there are very few things that slow people's progress, both personally and professionally, down more than the imposter syndrome, atelophobia, which are branches on the tree of the victim mentality. And that's what we've been talking about for a long time, is how our words influence us for better and for worse. And we help people get their language working for them so they can go forth and do the things they want to do and be successful and breathe well so they enjoy being in their skin. And the better you breathe, the better you listen, which is foundational for any successful relationship. Show me somebody who's in a relationship and they're like, man, I just love this person to death, and I can't talk to them at all.
Wow, there's a lot there. You're speaking to the choir or preaching to the choir about the importance of the breath, and I'm not even going to open up that trap door, because we could end up just talking breath work for the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes. But a couple of follow-up questions there. One, what are some of the common words and phrases that you find people using in your coaching experience and your speaking engagements, where they don't even realize the negative impact that they have, right? Like, certainly, I'm never going to be any good. Like, okay, yeah, that's a pretty obvious one. But are there words or phrases that people don't even realize they're really kind of undermining their own progress with? And then as a follow-up to that, how do you start to become more aware of the words you use?
Great questions. I'll answer that first one, starting with the definition of the victim mentality. Most people have never heard the definition of the victim mentality. And if you got access to pen and paper, I suggest you write it down, because most people, like I said, have never heard the definition of the victim mentality. They've heard people say, oh, you're playing the victim, or that person's got a victim mentality. The definition is very important, in my personal and professional opinion, to have a well-rounded conversation, contextualized conversation about mindset. Without it, we're leaving a lot on the table. And then when we write it down, so the numbers are 30, 50, 80, we remember 30% of what we hear, 50% of what we write, 80% of what we teach or share. So I'll do this twice. Here's the definition of the victim mentality, verbatim. First time slow so you can write it down, and second time I'll speed it up and put some polish on it. And then we'll go into the three main language patterns that script roughly 85% of people's victim mentality. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. Same definition, a little faster with some polish. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait, everybody, where a person tends, it's a tendency. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. Person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends, underline that word, as in it has to have a habitual thought process and attributions. Habitual accurately implies duration and addiction, and then what's a thought process? We all have one. Your thought process, it's the words that you use repeatedly. And then attributions, what's an attribution? It's a characteristic. And we're known as the language people. Thank you. It's nice to be known for something. We might as well be known as the language and the breathing people. And gun to head, push comes to shove, it's about the breath. We're there to help people change their words to unlock their breathing, because everything improves when you're breathing well. And most people's stories, their language is working against them, and their breath is trapped in the chest, and that is a very unfun place to live. And so my simple mind says, okay, well, if there's if there's habitual thought process, if there's words that are used repeatedly that have to be there in order to script people's victim centricities, as in creating the victim-villain dynamic, what are the words? And here they are. So there are three main pillars of what we call conflict language. And we shot a course and threw it in the trash can, which was no small thing to do when my boy and I were bootstrapping this business, because in that online course, the only thing we changed was taking out victim mentality language and putting in conflict language, because it was too strong of a place to start the conversation. People are like, I'm not a victim. And then they're like, oh yeah, conflict. I got a little bit of that going on at work, and you should see my marriage. And right. And so after doing this one thing, somewhere between full-time and overtime, the whole time for 16 years, there's, like I said, three pillars of victim mentality language. They account for around 85% of the words that people use to create the flavors of it, because there's numerous. It's like Baskin Robbins. And so the first one, the first one is projections, which we've gone into, where we started. The first two stories I told were projections. He did that to me. Look at the words. He did that to me. He's in there, me's in there. That means he's in the picture and I'm in the picture, and he's doing something to me, and I have to wait for him to stop to where I can feel better, even though the whole thing is hallucinating in my imagination, and that single event happened once 4 years ago. I'm replaying that thing numerous times a day, okay? And as long as because 2 + 2 = 4, as long as those words are in there combined that way, you're getting that. I don't care how sick you are of it. Neither does the universe. It's like, oh, these are your words. This is what you get. And then, he made me think we needed to get married. Or she's wasting my time. She is wasting my time. Take out the she and put in I. Let's get real, folks. Who's wasted more of your time than you? There's no close second. There's no close second. Or, my mom always talks to me like a child. Take out mom and put in yourself. See if it fits. And part of us does not like, out of all the projection keywords, he, she, they, you, people's first name, I need you to respect me more. Take out the you and put in I. I need me to respect you. Let's get powerful with our words, okay? And part of us is not going to like that. The part of us that wants to be absolved of responsibility, like I said earlier, and then especially if we've got a friend group that's, people trauma bond together. Oh, I'll share you tell me your worst story and I'll tell you mine, and then we can meet in the middle. Yay! And then gossip's right. That's coming afterwards, and then you'll talk about really wasting your time and energy. And mom, dad, people's first names, throw the government in there. And so what happens with those keywords is you want to watch out for them. You want to raise your awareness about what words you're using, and I'll answer the second question after we get through these three pillars, what to do, because I have some very simple things to do that work. And the projections, you want to start there last, everybody, because that's where people's white knuckle grip is on their stories. Projections it's a very strong tendency to have out of the three pillars. There's projections, negation, soft talk. Out of those three pillars, that's where people's higher level, more highly charged emotions are. And the stronger the emotions, the stronger the attachment to that story or the way the words are put together. And so that's one, projections. Then there's negations, okay? And it sounds like this. I'm not going to do that again. Or I won't spend all my money this weekend. Or I haven't got the time to do that. Or that shouldn't be a problem. So it's all the ent words. Can't, won't, isn't, not, shouldn't, don't. Those guys. What they do, everybody, and really do a really good job of doing, and I'm going to get this on the table and then share a story about a can't statement that almost got a guy fired. They force us to stare at the worst case scenarios. My grandmother was a third-degree black belt Olympic gold medalist in the art of worrying. She worried like the best of them, right? And that's exactly how she was doing it. I knew something was going on there because she was just a wound-up mess all the time. And then when I played back what she would say, I was like, oh, yeah, that's why you keep making all these worst-case scenario pictures and then telling us, how much you're worried about us and expect us to love you. It's a very strange expression of love if you want to get real about it. I'm supposed to be grateful for you seeing my life go down in flames? Like, what? Wait a minute. How about you just make some pictures of me knocking it out of the park? Let's see if you can do that. But people, like I said, people get addicted to this stuff. Stuff being the type of story that they tell themselves. We can get addicted to being proactive and responsive and responsible and a great team member and punctual. And it's all the stuff that you want to be. You can get addicted to that, and there are words that help you go in that direction and practice those habits. You can get addicted to gossiping. You can get addicted to, like Gautier said it, you can get addicted to a certain kind of sadness. You can get addicted to complaining. You can get addicted to seeing yourself as a loser. You can get addicted to comparison hell. You can get addicted to being late. You can get addicted to staring at yourself on the couch and all alone. So I was up in Calgary in 2014, and I did a training for a sales team. And I stayed after and did some one-on-one sessions with all of their reps. And I was in a room with a young guy, 22, 23, and he was struggling at work. And so two chairs facing each other. Okay, I'm looking right at him. This is what he said, everybody, and this is what he did. He goes, Mark, I can't keep focusing on my past. And he turned around. Mike just saw me do that. He turned around and looked behind him. It was a macro movement. It wasn't a micro move. It was a little nose scratch. No, he turned around and looked behind him and then turned back and looked at me. And I go, you just turned around and looked behind you, right? He goes, what? And I go, yeah, what did you see? And he said, I saw myself on the couch and all alone. That's 2 of the 4, which I'm about to break to explain. And then I asked him, what are you feeling? And he said, angry and also scared. And then I didn't need to ask because I could see it. I could hear it. I said, where are you breathing? He goes, man, this thing's in my throat. So our language, everybody, let's do this too. When I say language, I mean our internal dialogue and our external dialogue. What we think, what we say, and what we write influences 4 key aspects of our experience of ourselves, to keep things simple. Our imagination, you know what that is? That's the pictures in the movies that you make. Our energy, feelings, and emotions. Our language influences our body language or our posture. What do you mean? You ever talk yourself into a bad mood and stay there? You have. And guess what? It starts to mold your body. And then we look at the words, everybody. I'm down in the dumps. I've got a heavy heart. I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. And then talk yourself into a good mood and stay there. and then you present yourself to the world different, and you say things like, I'm getting ahead, or I'm over the moon, or things are looking up. Because I doubt anyone had any classes about, I'm going to sound smart here for a second, about how to use their words to place themselves psychogeographically speaking in their imagination. I doubt it. And then our breathing. And our language influences our breath. Imagine that. And that's actually how we got into the fitness space. If we want to go on a relevant side story, which I can do very quickly, we went on Barbell Shrugged, who they know Julie, and I'm sure Julie knows them. Back in the day, in the late teens, they were the mouthpiece in the functional fitness space. And we went on there in 2017. I flew from Thailand to Los Angeles to do a podcast in person. That's called Showing Up.
Yeah,
and we went on there to talk about how our language influences our breathing, for better and for worse, because that's kinda important for the fitness industry. And and so me being the rocket scientist that I am, I handed him a pen and a piece of paper, which I do a lot, and I go, write that sentence down. And he did the same thing. He goes, which one? And I go, because again, people aren't thinking about their thinking. They're just letting that thing rip. They're just letting that story go and believing the voice in their head. Oh yeah, of course this is accurate. It's my own voice in my own head. Yeah, let's go with the first thing that shows up. What could possibly go wrong? Quite a lot. And so I had him write it down. I can't keep focusing on my past, because we're still on the negation part of the conversation. Everybody, projections, negations, soft talk's coming. Negations. I can't keep focusing on my past. And I did it just like this, and he did it just like this. I go, if that's what you can't keep doing, what can you start doing? And he did the same thing. Clunky with uptalk. This was a half of a sentence. He goes, focus on my future more? And I go, yes, say it as a sentence. And man, it was, look at the words. It was like he was learning a new language. And in one way he was using to learn his language in a different way, which is in some ways harder. The outcomes are profound, okay? And it does take a little bit of elbow grease. So what? Anything of substance does. And he goes, I can focus on my future more. I can. And you see him talk himself into it. I can focus on my future more. I can focus on my future more. And then he just got to a matter of fact. Now that he's looking in the right direction, okay, I go, yeah, you're right. What can you do? What can you do? And he identified three things. There was 2 books he knew he needed to read. He needed to enroll in the mentorship program, which was free at work, and then go out for the social hour every Tuesday night, first Tuesday every month, because all the most successful sales reps did. Go hang out with them. It's way better than the gossip table, trust me. And then he emailed me 9 months later and said, dude, I did those 3 things. Because who cares? I mean, okay, words, fine. Yeah, let's nerd out on the parts and stuff. But most people don't care about that. It's like the mechanic. The mechanic, you pull your car in and they pop the hood and they start telling you about spark plugs and oil filters and brake pads. And people are like, dude, I just want to get out on the highway and put the top down and play Led Zeppelin. Please. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with the words, okay? If you're a coach, I highly suggest learning this, okay? Or if you're into personal and professional development of any sort, I highly suggest learning this. And the outcomes are what's most important, as in you will sound better. You'll sound better speaking because your breath isn't trapped in your chest. The imposter syndrome, which most people suffer from at some point in time, regardless of whatever endeavor they go into and their level of education and training, that gets way turned down. Confidence goes up, self-image brightens up, and everything gets better. I mean, on the imposter syndrome note, and I know I'm on a rant, I lived in London in the summer of 2012, and I did a 1 session with someone in the C-suite from oil and gas. And the thing that she wanted to talk about was crippling imposter syndrome. This woman was way up there. And she goes, it makes no sense because I'm highly credentialed and I've got a tremendous resume and my peers love me, and I go to work every day thinking that I'm going to get found out and I don't deserve to be there. And you know where we went? We went into some bullying in her childhood because that's where that thing was coming from. And those stories hadn't been written down, and the words were put together in a way where she was the supreme and forever victim of that thing. And she went and told her friends. And I booked up with people from the C-suite in consulting and oil and gas for the entire summer, and 80% of those people had similar stories. Okay. Then, this 3 months ago, I go down to, and this is alive and well in the coaching world, trust me. It's one of the main things, if not the main thing, that we help our coaches remediate in a couple of different ways with the lifted certifications. I go down to Texas and I do a podcast with a Navy SEAL. So we talked about all the same stuff. And at the end, he said, you know, I'm pretty sure a lot of guys in our community suffer from that exact same thing, imposter syndrome. And not that I needed any more proof, Mike. It was just that was the final straw on top of the final straw. The most elite fighters in the world. D1 athletes plus guns, okay? And minds of steel suffering from that. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's rampant in the healthcare industry. I mean, just, you know, how many physicians that imposter syndrome is just a huge component of their perceived identity. I think it's everywhere, right? I mean, we're societal conditioning, just it's pretty hard to get out unscathed. You know, whether you had what would be traditionally considered a rough or traumatic childhood, or whether you just, you know, went through growing up in Western society and you had, you know, what lots of folks might consider to be a really, you know, relatively easy upbringing. There's the tiniest things can have a real big impact on self-image and identity. And I think I'm 100% on board. Imposter syndrome is an epidemic, and really, you know, looking into and diving into the sort of like raw vulnerability it takes to really investigate it and see what's behind it. It's not pleasant, but, you know, as you mentioned, you want to make substantive change, you got to put in substantive effort.
Well
so
said.
It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be fun. The outcomes are fun, okay. And if we look at it and we get honest with ourselves, you know, and some of that stuff is uncomfortable and scary, but you know what? That's nothing compared to you know what the real scary stuff is? Living with that for 30, 40 years.
Yeah,
you know?
not changing.
That's the real scary stuff, in my opinion. My opinion. Yeah, I'll pick up the pen, even though it weighs 500 pounds. I'll take a little sting now versus, you know, just some you know, deathbed regrets. That's the stuff that really scares the crap out of me. And I'll keep that. And then there's soft talk. So a lot of times people ask, what do I do? And I have two. So what do I do in order to increase my awareness of the words that I'm using? Okay, I have a specific recommendation, and then a general recommendation. The specific recommendation is the third pillar of conflict language or victim mentality language, and it's called soft talk. And here's what it sounds like. There's only a handful of words. I think I might be procrastinating. I guess I'm drinking too much coffee. Maybe I should spend more time with my wife. It's probably a good idea for us to call a professional. I kinda feel like I should stretch more. You know, I should meditate more often. Those words, here it is, everybody, those words are in your language. Those words are in your client's language, and they are responsible for a vast majority of the anxiety and indecision that people are struggling with. Because guess what? If those words are in there, you're getting anxiety and indecision. My favorite quote about anxiety and indecision is from Malmodius. I prefer the fear of making the wrong decision to the terror of indecision. And we've been talking about this for a long time. These are the soft talk keywords. Probably, perhaps, feels like, guess, maybe, could, might, possibly, sort of, kind of, potentially, hopefully one day everything will work out. Huh? Try, one day, should, almost like. And if you all want this, I just read off of the Soft Talk Challenge worksheet. We have a 7-day Soft Talk Challenge. It's free and awesome. www.enlifted.me/soft talk. You'll get 7 emails with soft talk related stuff. And here's what happens. It's the same thing with the car and the reticular activating system. Once you raise your awareness about these words, and why do we start with soft talk? Glad you asked, everybody, because it's the easiest thing. You just pluck it out the guess. I guess I'm drinking too much coffee. Take out the guess. I'm drinking too much coffee. Not to make the sentence true. You'll know it's true, whether it's true or not, based on how you feel about saying it. It's almost like I'm procrastinating. And most of the time, if you're using soft talk, you are doing it. No, I am procrastinating, okay? And now you can make a decision whether you want to keep doing it or not. Maybe I need to spend some time with my wife. No, I need to spend more time with my wife. Hey, babe, what are you doing on Saturday? And so you can talk yourself. There's an art and a science to talking yourself into stuff.
Yeah.
There's an art and a science to talking yourself out of stuff. There's language patterns to make us inaction prone. There are language patterns to make us action prone. And to talk about identity, where we brought it up before we started recording. I'm looking forward to that part, well, the whole conversation and that part of the conversation. Whatever we practice doing, eventually we identify ourselves as such. And then once we identify ourselves as such, it hockey sticks. We get better at it. So let's say someone uses a lot of soft talk. So they're practicing creating indecision. If they continue creating indecision, they eventually identify themselves as indecisive. And once they identify themselves as indecisive, they now get a lot better at being indecisive. Same thing is just picks anything, punctual. Someone practices being on time, and if they keep doing that, eventually they identify themselves as a punctual person, and now they're even better at being on time. And so it's the conundrum of identity. It goes both ways. And so that's part of. I have 2 answers for what do we do. That's one of them. Soft talk.
All right. Well, I definitely want to hear answer number 2.
Answer number 2 is slow down your rate of speech. Faster someone
I'm just really
talks,
proud of myself for saying I definitely want to hear answer number 2 and not, I wonder if I should maybe consider possibly guessing if I'd like to hear answer number 2.
See, I was expecting you to speak solidly because you're you. And you're doing things. Most people, it's really hard to get stuff across the finish line, everybody, and show up and be seen and practice being successful when our language is riddled with soft talk. And it's a matter of, it is what it is. And it's upon further inspection, it is as simple as that. Take out some of those words and here it is. You're going to feel the difference. You'll feel the difference between, I guess I might need to get back in the gym, and I need to get back in the gym, and then I'm getting back in the gym, and then I'm going back in the gym on Monday. It's like, right. You see that progression right there? That feels good. It's a totally cool skill to have. And then the second thing is to slow down your rate of speech, just 10%, and watch what happens. Your breath will loosen up. And then you'll give yourself a little extra space and distance to start putting the dots to connect the dots between, what words are doing what.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how a pause is so uncomfortable for so many people, and that it's okay, when someone asks a question, to think about what you really think before you say something. And it really just takes practice. It's all of these things, and it's one of the things I love about what you've covered today. And these are learnable skills. We learned to speak and think the way that we do now, and we can learn to influence the way that we speak and think. And there's so many like beautiful overlapping Venn diagrams of the sort of fake it till you make it style of instruction out there about, whether it's body language and kind of making yourself big before a public speaking engagement, and how our body language influences our verbal language and thought language, and vice versa. I have to guess that you are, and notice how I'm using guess actively, not that I guess that. I have to guess that you're a fan of Byron Katie, because her whole line of inquiry starts with, is that true? Can I absolutely be certain that that's true? And I won't try and paraphrase the whole approach from Byron Katie, but it's a chance to truly, authentically evaluate whether that story that's running in your head has any relationship to reality. And I think language is a accessible and really opportune door to start doing that line of inquiry. Is, he did that to me. Okay. Is it true? Can you absolutely be certain that it's true? What happens if you make it, I did that to me, right? And I think this is, it's incredibly powerful stuff. We're a little over on time, and I got a jet, which is a bummer for me, because I could spend like 2 more hours doing this with you, and maybe we could just work out a second follow-up pod. But before we wrap, I want to let listeners know, if they want to learn more about what you're doing and get a little bit deeper, where are the best places to send them?
Enlifted, thank you. Enlifted.me for our coaching certifications. We have a podcast. It's called Get Enlifted. It's all about words. It's all about the words. It's very fun, very entertaining. And then we do on Instagram at Enlifted Coaching. No, excuse me, at Enlifted Coaches. It's a free online school, and we do a live coaching class every Tuesday night, 6 p.m. EST. Yeah, I'm running it. I coach and teach the whole way through.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Well, Mark, I really thoroughly enjoyed this, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you a bit. And I do hope we can get another one on the books, because I feel like there's so much more here. But this is a great place for us all to start. And thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you're a Wild Health patient, you might not know, but you have access to our referral program. This gets your friends and family 25% off Wild Health services. Just head to Clarity, and in the top right corner, you'll see Refer a Friend. Click there, and you'll be brought to a page with your referral code. Happy sharing.